Hello and welcome to the Art of Teaching the Whole Child in a Pandemic, Cultivating Trauma-Sensitive Practices for Resilience. This is your Module 4, Mid-Year Review and Renew, because at this point, you have developed 3 habits across our different modules and you're moving into February towards 4 habits that stick. You now have 2 under your belt, and so we want to take a moment to not add one more thing to your plate, but to pause, to think about how the year has gone, think about where those habits are and where those strategies are in your current routine, and to think about ways that we can make sure they stick, because that's the key here, is not to revolutionize your way of work, but to integrate 4 new habits that are going to help you and your students be resilient through this very challenging year. So just as a recap of where we've been, we've talked about habit plans and how all of our habits, whether we're intentional with them or not, revolve around these 3 ingredients of the cue, the routine, and the reward. And then we talked about how to use that to take care of yourself, as well as to integrate new habits such as feedback or greetings, to shift the way we increase student voice and choice in the classroom. And so you've had a number of strategies that you're probably trying to use in your classroom. And we don't want to add one more to your plate this time, but to move back into the foundations of our course, because we have a number of strategies we want to get to here. But the key here is to be able to notice and cultivate our habits and take care of ourselves. And the fact is that our excellence, we are what we repeatedly do. Excellence then is not a single act, but a habit, according to Aristotle. So it's all about showing up on the day-to-day and integrating these into our routines. So I want to make sure that the strategies that you've selected, that you're trying to integrate into your daily grind, are sticking, because I don't want to add one more to your plate because we have enough going on right now, right? So the module 4 objectives are to review your personal progress in using your resilience routines, to review some model habit recipes of how we can do this and what this can look like, and then take a step to renew your personal commitment to a habit. So you're going to need about 20 minutes for this video, some clear headspace in your printed or digital journal. Looks like this, so you can do steps 1 through 3. So you're already on the right track by tuning into this video, and now we're going to move into step 2, completing that habit reflection to notice where are your resilience routines right now. So how are your new habits? So take a moment to think back through your first 3 modules, to look back in your notes, look at what you've submitted, and to take note of what is your cue, routine, and reward for your self-care habit. What is the cue, routine, reward for your positive climate strategy, whether that's feedback or greetings? And then likewise for your voice or choice strategy. And then take note of what the rating is. How often have you been able to follow through on that? Pull up your pulse chart to take a look at how well you've been able to stick to those strategies, what on your scale of 1 to 10 it is, so that you can identify where you'd like to move from here. Which strategy would you like to stick even more to as relevant for moving forward? And if you'd like to check out some models in the Module 4 resource, by all means, go check those out. There's a lot of examples in there that I've provided to you before about how to craft these habits, but also some models from your peers about what your peers have designed and some of the best ones that I've seen that are going to help those persons stick to their habits. So the key here is to think through, where are my habits now that I've said I was going to do, and which one do I want to stick more? Which one do I want to make sure I'm making a part of my daily grind and I don't fall away from, so that I don't even have to think about it going forward. So keep it up. After you've done that reflection, you've identified, okay, this is the one that I'm looking at where I want to move forward with. Now we're going to talk about identifying a stick to it step that's going to help you keep your habit commitment and share it with others. So it's very likely that when you took a look at the self-reflection, you noticed that I'm getting a little rusty in some of these areas. Like, I actually forgot what my cue was for this strategy, or I forgot entirely which voice routine I said I was going to do. And that's okay. That's totally normal. I don't want you to beat yourself up for that, because you might be thinking to yourself, when you see some of these numbers, or you think back about what you said you were going to do, you might think, I just must not care enough. I guess I just don't have it within me. Maybe if I just found the right motivation, like you're probably gonna kick yourself. But I want to tell you to keep calm and stop blaming yourself, because research shows us that a lot can hinder our habit change, from having poor cues, and so we're not triggered into using that habit, trying something new, a new or complex routines, can be very difficult to develop as a habit. And then we have distractions, of course, like pandemics and racism and elections. There's all kinds of things that can be distracting us right now. And so keep that in mind and have some grace for yourself moving forward. But I do want to empower you with some ideas and thoughts about how we can move our rusty habits into sticking more. And so I'm going to go through a number of ways our habits collect rust, and then what some potential strategies you can use to stick to it. All right. So the first two that I'm going to talk about are rare and unobtrusive. So the first one is rare. So this is when our opportunity for using the habit is just not very frequent. It just doesn't happen on a daily basis. And so you can't build a habit for something that you really only use once a week or maybe less. And so maybe in this instance, it's, you said, I want to build more group roles, but you know what? Lately, I haven't been doing much group work because of remote learning or whatever the reason is. There just hasn't been many opportunities lately. So that's okay. That's normal. That's how things collect rust. And then another situation you might find yourself in is it's unobtrusive. So the prompt that you said, the cue that you said is going to cue you into using this routine or strategy. It's really easy to miss. It's not very tangible. So maybe your plan was during my lessons, I'm going to use a fist of five. But you know what? If I were there as your coach in the classroom, I might not know exactly when might be the best times to use the fist of five. I might not be able to sit in the back and say, oh, this is a good time, because you just said during lessons, and that's very vague. And so we can talk about how we can move forward with this to make this more sticky. So the first stick to it strategy that I want to share with you is stacking. So you might remember this from our first module, but the idea here is changing the cue to be an existing habit, something that you do without fail. So for me, I knew I wanted to do fist of five a lot in my when I'm teaching. And so one of the things that I noticed as a good habit that, well, kind of a bad habit that I wanted to break, but I wanted to stack on to my fist of five was I noticed I was asking a lot. Make sense? Like I would cover some material and then I would look out at my students that say, make sense. And I would get some nods from students who were like wanting to be nice, and then probably some blank stares from some. And I was like, okay, moving on. Like, or just it was really hard for me to read the room. And I noticed, well, that's a habit where I'm looking for student feedback. And so I decided to stack that habit. So every time I caught myself saying, make sense, I would ask for that fist of five. So this is a good way to kind of notice, okay, here's an existing habit that I'm using to try to get at this strategy, but it's not quite the best way of using it. So I'm going to stack on the better strategy for getting student voice. All right, the next way we collect rust is having the size of the routine just taking too much effort. Maybe you bit off more than you can chew, and the strategy that you decided you wanted to do is just really intimidating or takes a lot of effort. So in this point, our stick steps that we could use is to make it tiny or instead. So making the habit simpler by making it tiny, or swapping it out for a smaller strategy to use instead. So maybe you decided you wanted to do jigsaw groups, but then you're noticing like, that's I haven't gotten around to that because it just seems so intimidating to plan, and it just uh, it takes a lot. So maybe instead you do group roles, so you're making it a little more tangible, less intimidating, and less effort. And that's totally okay. The key here is to move forward. James Clear is an expert in habits, and he talks about this idea of just moving forward with some more habits that you're looking for. So let's take a look, listen.
Sure. So habits are really important because they compound over time. So, if you were able to just get 1% better each day for a whole year, you'd end up almost 37 times better by the time you're done with it. So they seem like really small choices, right? In the moment, it seems like nothing in order to make these choices. But over the span of our lifetimes, they end up making a difference between who you are and who you could be.
Right. The New York Times is coining that term, essentially micro progress, to describe breaking it down into small units to achieve a bigger goal. What's a way to start that?
Sure. So I like to talk about the 2-minute rule. And the idea here is that you want to downscale your habit until it only takes 2 minutes to do. So for example, going for a run might be downscaled into just tying your running shoes, or folding laundry is downscaled into fold the first pair of socks, or
start it.
Yeah.
Point.
The idea is that we
Don't feel
often
like you have to
optimize for the result, but instead we should optimize for the starting line, not the finish line.
Yeah, you said don't look at the big picture of success. You should really concentrate on just do something.
So that's the key here, is to just do something. If you want to increase student voice, just do something to increase student voice. It doesn't have to be the most beautiful strategy that you've ever imagined, but it might be just a simple one to stick to make it a habit. All right, the next one is theoretical. So we get rusty habits by having the routine not being very specific for use. And so maybe a sub could not use it as it's written because it just needs to be clarified a little bit more, where we write it out more clearly and maybe consider making a script. And so if we're going to write it out, sometimes some of us might look back at our cue routine or reward and we see it's very vague, like for feedback, when a student's behaving poorly, I will praise others. Well, that's a good start, but take a look at how much more specific we could get. When Jamie makes disrespectful statements to me, I will walk away and look at the classroom rules to see what behavior I can catch, such as, thank you for working cooperatively and respectfully. So at this point, I'm naming a student that I anticipate to have these disrespectful comments, and I have my game plan of what I'm going to do, what exact behavior I'm going to praise others for. So I'm using my classroom rules as a resource. And so you can see naming the student, writing out the script is definitely going to help me stick to this strategy a little bit more. And then maybe if your option was choice, where you wrote out when a student is disengaged, I will use a confidence helper. Let's be a little more specific again, naming the student, writing out a script. So saying when Chris or Jamari do not follow directions, which I kind of anticipate sometimes, I will ask, do you want to do it by yourself or with help? And notice that I'm nudging them towards independence. And so this is a great technique to notice, this is the exact script, this is the choice that I'm going to give. I've written it out, and this is going to help them become more independent. So just taking that step to write it out can be really helpful. And then finally, we can collect rest on our habits by making them, it makes us yawn. So the routine just isn't very rewarding when we do it. There's not much of an impact or satisfaction from using it. So what we're going to do is the stick strategy of keeping it fun, of treating yourself, right? So pairing the strategy with something fun or some kind of treat. So maybe you decide you want to stick to the jigsaw method, but you're going to plan it over a glass of wine. Maybe you're going to continue to try for these greetings at the door, but you know what? You're going to stick a stash of chocolates or other sweet close to the door so that you can treat yourself to that while you're greeting the students, because it's not that impactful. I know a lot of middle and high school students might just give you an eye roll when you greet them or something like that. So it's not, the impact is not obvious and clear. So you're going to treat yourself at this moment. So here are our stick steps. So stacking onto an existing habit, making it tiny, like less than 2 minutes, swapping out to clear instead, a simpler strategy, clarifying it by writing it out, or keeping it fun with a treat. So it's up to you which one you think might sound good for you. And just think through which one is starting to sound right for you. You don't have to write it all out and make it happen right now. I'm actually just eager to hear from you what you think might be a good next step, which one is sounding good. And for a little inspiration as you move forward and thinking about your growth and progress here is some final thoughts from James.
We kept
Yeah.
teasing Sir Isaac Newton, so we should at least point out quickly, one of his 3 laws, right? Objects in motion tend to stay in motion.
Yeah. Getting started, it allows you to develop the most effective form of motivation, which is progress. And so if you can see yourself getting these small wins, then you have a reason to continue working. And if you start in just a small way, then you're going to want to keep going.
Thank you, James.
That was my goal this year. It's like, don't worry, just get on the treadmill and walk for 10 minutes. And all of a sudden you're there, it's 30 minutes, it's 40 minutes. You started it. Yeah.
Just started. Thank you, James Fair.
You're welcome.
Very nice to meet you.
All right. So you see that really the key here is to just get started, just to move forward with some next steps. So as far as next steps within the week, upload your key takeaway from this video and some initial ideas to stick to it. What are your initial gut thoughts? Which strategy might help you? And instead of a video next week, what we're going to do is dive into those habits, those cue routine rewards, and to think through, how do I help you, and how do your peers help you stick to it and those habits? So what we're going to do is you're going to sign up for a 30-minute video call brainstorm session with some peers that I'll be providing for you. And then book a 15-minute one-on-one coaching session with me. So you can use this QR code. You can pull up your camera to this, your phone camera to this, to be able to sign up for that pretty quickly. But I would love to hear from you about how we can work together to help you stick to the strategies that you're working on, and to focus on just making those small wins and those small progresses that really add up from James. All right, so this is your all 3 steps for the week. Thank you so much for tuning in, and don't forget that when you get your daily pulse for this month, what we're actually going to do is personalize that to whatever it is that you're trying to stick to. So that way, when you take a look at your chart, it's about the strategy that you're focusing on sticking to for this month, February. So I'm really eager to hear what strategy you want to stick to more consistently, and let's move on from there. So if you want any questions, have any concerns, you just want to reach out to me more personally, do not hesitate to email me or sign up for office hours. You can pull up your phone camera here and take a look at this link to take you to office hours to sign up for those. If you have questions about navigating the course, about making suggestions, anything like that, I'm all ears. And I do want to close with some positive, uplifting message to you, because you have already done a lot this year, and I want to take notice of that for sure.
Dear teachers, last spring you made the shift from face-to-face teaching to pandemic pedagogy. In a matter of days, you found innovative solutions to huge challenges. You designed virtual lessons with limited time and limited resources, and there was no roadmap or blueprint. Now, it wasn't perfect. There were some mistakes along the way, but you were there for your students every single day. You've proven that social distance doesn't have to mean relational distance. Despite the roadblocks, you've built a classroom community on empathy and kindness, where students engage in meaningful collaboration. You've done check-ins and partnered with families. You've helped find resources for students who are struggling. You've experimented with new approaches, and you've taken creative risks. You've continued to learn. You're reading books, watching videos, listening to podcasts, and reading articles. And you're curating content and engaging in professional discussions. You're crafting meaningful lessons that empower students with voice and choice, like that awesome scavenger hunt, or the maker project, or that blogging project, or the choice menu, or the game-based learning activity you did. Now, 2020 has been hard. We've seen wildfires and natural disasters and an economic downturn. Oh, and apparently murder hornets? Seriously, murder hornets. Meanwhile, teaching is especially challenging right now. It can feel draining when you have a barrage of emails to answer, or when you do a video conference and face a wall of black screens. Some of the social media comments about teachers have been downright toxic. But know this, you are impacting lives. Right now, there's a student who feels known and heard because of you. There's a student who is passionate about learning because of you. There are students who will remember you forever as someone who was there for them in these dark times. You are changing the world, even when you can't see it. So thank you.